Hello, everybody. Welcome to an episode of In My Opinion. My name is John.
My name is Lester.
And before we continue, no, I don't know if you all know this, but we have an Instagram page, imo.pod.
Yes, please go ahead and follow.
Yeah, you can see our updates on Insta Story. You can see the post, who the next guest is, and stuff like that. Get yourself hyped up, and then get back here onto YouTube and then watch us talk about real things,
That's right.
or maybe not real things, like funny stories also can, you know.
So what's the real thing we're talking about today, John?
Okay. So today, right, we are exploring a topic that I think is very near and dear to a lot of Singaporeans, but it's
Yes.
also sadly one of the least talked about things in Singapore.
Yeah.
And that's sex education.
That's right.
Right, we all remember, right? The primary school, primary 6, they bring one banana, then they roll one rubber, and then they call that sex ed.
Which is crazy, but we are going to get into all the problems in sex ed soon.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think today, we pondered upon this topic, and that's why we want to talk about it. And yeah, what do you think? Why don't we begin with a few anecdotes first?
Yes.
Would you like to share your experience with Singaporean sex ed?
I do. Okay, so like my sex ed, I feel like until JC was a little bit skewed. Cause like I'm from Hwa Chong, so I'm in an all boys secondary school. So
Yeah.
I feel like the sex I don't know anything from the girls side of sex ed because even in Hwa Chong JC, we was kind of split for most of the sex ed stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember a whole ton from sex ed. And I
Right.
feel like that's the problem. I think that most of my sex ed, like for example, learning about contraceptives, about learning about like STDs and all that, right, came from
Yeah.
bio. And like
I never took bio.
you never took bio. Okay.
Yeah.
But like for me, I learned most of it from bio because bio they'll give you like basically like the
Human
anatomy of
anatomy, is it?
yeah, correct. And that includes
Ah,
also sometimes they also talk about contraceptives and STDs as part of their curriculum.
reproduction, is it? Like the reproduction part of it.
Yeah, the reproduction system part of the syllabus lah. And
Right.
like other than that, right, I don't actually remember sex ed beyond like a few crazy moments in my life, like sex ed classes.
Yeah, I also don't really recall any main like sex ed sessions. I only remember those one or two, like, oh, everyone sit together in one room, and then this presenter, this teacher or presenter gives a really awkward presentation, and then the only message that we all always take away from that is you don't do sex.
Don't have sex. Yes, correct. That's the message. It's always abstinence.
Yeah.
Which is madness. But like I think like one of the stories that I think fully encapsulates my sex education experience in one story, right, is that this once I remember, I think I was in Sec 3 or Sec 4. My teacher
Uh-huh.
like told us like, okay, if you have any desires to like masturbate, you should like he recommends putting a rubber band around our wrist and snapping it. So that we learn to condition ourselves not to do it.
Not to touch yourself.
Not to pleasure yourself, masturbate, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, I can see the rationale and the point that the teacher or whatever the syllabus was trying to do, right? Is to try to teach kids to not explore sexual activity too early.
Okay, yeah.
Which I think is a noble cause, right?
Okay, yeah, sure.
But I think at the same time, like I feel that the sex education is very misplaced in Singapore for this particular aspect because like I feel that it's very much part of the person's growth and the person's like physical health. So like I don't know where I feel like it's always better to teach how to be safe and to actually expose and explain to them, because I mean we're all people who have grown up. That means we have all been kids before, and we all know how kids are, and we all know how it is during puberty. Hormones be raging. You tell them no, it's not gonna stop them.
Yeah, it's really not. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I mean, having grown up already, right? I've come to realize that like actually a lot of my very early sexual experiences, right? It was very sloppy. A lot of things were like unsure.
Okay.
You know? And then as a result of that, like safe sex became like a like people throw around this word, but a lot of times you don't know what it means. Besides maybe put condom. and that kind of thing. And then like they talk about because my school also was the one that actively just instead of having a proper sex ed, they tell you about put condom. That's the only one I remember. And the second one I remember is also people tell you don't sex, don't masturbate.
Which is mad.
That's all I recall.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah. And like I think one of the reasons why, okay, maybe we explain to our viewers also, one of the reasons why we decided to talk about this topic, because there's this trend that's been going around in confession pages, right? The people have been saying that during this circuit breaker especially, right, some crazy sexual deviant activities have been done. So like we don't know if it's done, if these posts are posted for clout, right? When people just like, oh, they just want to sound cool, they want to sound sensational. So we're gonna give it the benefit of the doubt and assume that it happened. But some of these acts even included things like incest and stuff like that, which is like not ideal at all.
You're trying to think of the word to say, right?
Yeah, it's just not ideal at all. And it just raises so many red flags about what how we are, the kind of injustice we are doing to our youths. Because like a lot of these people, right, like they may be driven by passion and like sexual desire because of puberty or whatever, right? And they commit an act that they will regret for the rest of their life.
Yes, correct.
And like, who's to blame here if these two are minors, for example, and if they are siblings? Who's to blame here, right? Very clear. People will always want to point at parents, but I don't want to just point at parents. I feel that we have to point the finger at the education system for sexual health. Because I think as a result of us being an Asian society, right, this thing is always very hush. Don't you agree?
It really is. Like they really don't talk much about it. And the problem is, right, I think I actually like caught up with a teacher recently, and I was talking about like sex ed in school because it was a topic on my mind for a while already. And she was saying that like it's not so, it's the problem is that people's first like impression of sex and first like exposure to sex, right, comes from porn. It's never the school, it's never a healthy, reliable source, it's porn.
Exactly.
Which is a very violent form of sex.
No, which teaches you nothing. Yeah.
It teaches nothing.
Can you imagine? Okay, I don't need to say can I imagine, because I know this for a fact for myself.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first time that I can recall, okay, that I first sort of was exposed to sexual content. Right? Was, I believe, in like upper primary or lower secondary.
Upper primary. Holy crap. Okay.
It's like I don't even know the terms. Right? But like I remember how I discovered this. I'll never forget. I flipped dictionary, then I saw a word. Then after that, I for the death of me, I can't remember what this word is. When I saw the definition, then I was like, ooh. And then that was the first time I ever sort of like, search on the internet, because back then the internet is still like baby internet, right? So like that was the first time ever that I searched. Right? And then I just like felt guilty. I don't know what to do. And then it just felt like a very hush thing. I always felt like I was wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't really learn anything from there. And then it just sort of like for that portion of my adolescence, right, I felt that like every time I had desires or whatever, right, I felt very guilty. Dirty. And I felt like I would never be able to tell people about this.
Yeah. Correct.
Right? I'll never, like, as a kid, I feel that that's very damaging on the image that it portrays on this particular issue.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's why I feel that like our sex education in Singapore is truly lacking.
And like
I would say that maybe it's not just Singapore. I know a lot of places around the world. Right? And as a result of that, right, a lot of people engage in very unhealthy sexual practices without even knowing they're unhealthy until it's too late.
Correct. Yeah. And like the problem with porn is that like if your first impression is porn, right? Porn is, as I said, a very violent form of sex. And like it's very fetishized as well. So I'm not saying that fetishes are wrong. I'm not saying that all these things are problematic. It's just that if that's your first impression of sex and sexual intimacy, right, that like sets you up for a lot of problems in the future, especially when it comes to your sex in your own relationships and all that.
Yes.
And like I read this tweet by Jamila Jamil. She said something along the lines of like, learning how to have sex by watching porn is like learning how to drive by watching Fast and Furious. And it's really, really true. It's really a terrible way. And I was just so like for most of the time, because schools are not willing to teach you about sex properly, most of our first impressions were porn. Even if you don't want to watch porn, right? Somehow, like, people will randomly, guys school, okay, for boys school, right? People will just randomly show it to you as a prank. It's really stupid, but
I don't know. Based on what I recall, okay, based on the conversations I had with my female friends, right,
yeah,
right, it was a very simple premise whereby they said they go inside and then they teach about like period, teach about that kind of thing, but
yeah.
there is no real sex education. And like I feel like this is very detrimental to how kids develop, because like I give you an example, okay, so I feel that like based on who I am now, right, I'm 29 this year, right, all the experiences I had, right, is because I physically experienced them myself, and then as a result I slowly learn,
Yeah.
right, which I don't think is the best way to learn, because if I encounter any difficulty, right, I don't know who to ask besides the internet.
Yes, I got what you mean.
And then when that happens, right, what are some other things you ask from the internet? And that's also like porn. So like the picture of it, the entire picture of a healthy sex life, right, is completely wrong.
It just doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore.
And like with no basis for education, right?
Yeah.
It's like telling people to do calculus before you teach them multiplication. You know? You can get it after you fumble a while, but you don't necessarily understand it. Yeah, it's the same. So it's just weird, lor. And I think as a result of that, a lot of children are not able to children. I use the term children up to the point where people sort of exit their teens, you know, into adulthood, right? They are not able to understand sexual health properly. And also because of this culture, right, they are not willing to have this conversation with anyone.
And the problem with the conversation thing is that it creates this, like, I'm not saying that like virginity is like not not pure or like whatever. It's just it creates this unnecessary stress on people to remain quote unquote like pure and like save themselves from marriage. Which if you decide to, go ahead. But the problem is that if for those people that don't decide to, it creates a lot of shame and creates a lot of like guilt, and they make themselves think that they are like spoiled products or like used products. Or like, which is damn toxic. I feel that
this guilt is very unnecessary.
Yeah.
Right? Because like okay, I like I mentioned, right, I understand the objective. The objective is very simple. Why you want to educate kids and discourage, right? Because you don't want them to start too early. That's fine. But I think instead of telling, because okay, we've all been kids before, let's be honest here, okay? When you tell a kid don't do this, right? In their head, right, they don't hear don't do this. In their head, they only think, why cannot? You know?
Yeah.
Let's be honest here, okay? All kids think like that. Why cannot?
In fact, it's a psychological study.
Yeah, and they don't actively say the why cannot. And I think that's worse than like some kid who has like a, okay, this is gonna sound terrible, but like if a kid has a sexual encounter, right, I feel that it's better if they are willing to confide in an adult than they don't say.
Definitely, yeah.
Right? Because if they do confide in an adult, right, the adult is able to bring them to the rational solutions.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. But if they don't say, you will never know. And kids, if there's one thing kids are very good at, and let's be real honest here, okay? Kids are very good at hiding things from their parents.
The stricter the parents, the sneakier the children, right?
Of course.
And that's the crazy thing, is that like people are afraid to tell their parents or tell their adults. And because of that, like a lot of problems will start to arise. Let's say if they accidentally had unprotected sex.
Yes.
Like immediately the first thing you should be thinking of is to go and get a Plan B pill, right? Like a morning after pill.
Correct.
But like Singapore, you can't buy Plan B pills over the counter. So you have to go to the doctor.
Clinic. Yeah.
They have to give you a sex ed talk. They have to do all that shit before you can get a Plan B pill. So that whole bunch of stuff, right? And because plus on top of that, the societal expectation for you to like remain a virgin, right? It piles on, and then people, I've seen people who are like not willing to get a Plan B pill just in case. Like they'll be like, yeah, should be okay lah. And then what if it's not okay? Like,
exactly.
What if it's not okay? Which is just mad. This whole thing is just the culture of like not saying is just should be stopped lah. We should be more open about like conversations about sex. Exactly. But with that, what age do you think we should start? Because I think that's a very sensitive thing, right? Because like you said, like if you start too early, let's say you start at 13 or 14, people might get exposed to things that they're not even like aware about.
Yeah.
But if you start too late, they might end up doing things that they will regret or might regret.
So personally, right? Okay, personally, from in my personal opinion, now, okay, because before I work as like those adventure camp facilitator before.
Yeah.
Right, and you will be surprised, okay, that like upper primary school kids are already starting to see these things, like
to be aware,
like the oh my god she's hot, oh my god he's hot, even though like
for real,
it's like one kid pointing at another kid. Yeah, for real. So like camp instructors, right? One of those things that they tell us to do is that we never give our socials to kids.
Okay.
Because they're kids, and then they'll be like, oh my god, he's so good looking, and then after they like contact you how, right? Then there will be something terrible. And that's a very clear sign about when we should start.
Okay. When you were in primary school, do you have like any desires of any sort?
I mean, desire to see or
see lah, okay.
Right, I guess I don't know anything what.
Yeah, I think you will be like, hey, that girl pretty kind of.
Yeah, and I feel that like, okay, let me finish the about starting early also, right? So starting primary school early, but I feel right, it shouldn't just be a one and done kind of session. You know, last time primary school we always think of health education, teach you wash hand, teach you brush teeth.
Yeah,
I feel that health education, right, should continue until before NS, the age 17, should be poly
like
or JC.
La.
You know why?
Like why?
I'm going to give you the reason why. And MOE, you better take notes, okay? I tell you. Because every year the kid changes.
That's true.
And I think from primary 6 onwards, all the way up to before NS, is the time where you grow up the most. Physically, mentally, and sexually.
Okay.
Like if you want to compare, right, based on what I recall, okay, primary 6 me versus like NS me. From no pubic hair until all grow finish.
That's true.
And that's a very clear sign that the puberty cycle is immatures there, no meh? Right? And hence, right, every stage is slightly different, what? No need to be every year, right? Every 2 years revisit once. Not difficult, what?
Do they do that already? I feel like they have.
I have absolutely no idea.
You really have no idea. Which is crazy. It just shows that it's like pretty much useless. Okay,
it didn't work. And like every time there's like a sex ed session, it feels like go into aircon room and giggle together, and then nobody really learns anything because they'll go inside and tell you about scary looking STDs. Everyone has a good laugh about it, and then after that, there's no promotion on healthy sex. In fact, right, what I feel that another step that can be done further is if there's already an implementation like this and I'm just a really shit student, right? Every time there is a sex ed education, it should be on how to have healthy sex.
Okay.
Because for two reasons, okay? First is you want to teach them the right thing. You don't want them to fumble and discover on their own.
Yeah.
Right? Right? And kids are not good at like hearing don't do, then they don't do. No.
Yes.
I feel that this one is the other side of it. If you promote these things as teachers, right? Or like you talk about it as teachers, right?
They might say like, never mind lah, it's okay.
It just sounds uncool, right? When a teacher says it.
Sex. It's okay.
Yeah. Right. If you remove that taboo, right, when they're more willing to talk to you, right, without losing that barrier, and that's why I say whoever conducts this lesson also, I think it's quite important. Must be trained, right?
Yeah.
You remove this taboo, right? Suddenly it becomes just another topic. But you don't want to trivialize.
Correct.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So when it becomes another topic, they are okay with talking about it, but at the same time they understand. And that's how you get kids to grow, right? And the younger they are, right, the moment you do this, right, instead of when you don't trivialize it, right, it's going to sound super uncool, and hence your abstinence is achieved.
Like, in a weird way, to promote abstinence, you have to talk about no abstinence. But anyways, I feel like one of the things that my teacher actually said was that, okay, sure, even if you want to start earlier, right, I think a point that you brought up as well, people will not be like, are the students mature enough to understand?
No, that's the thing. And that's why I say that the curriculum has to change accordingly. So at the start, right, what is the most easy thing to teach? boys and girls?
I have no idea. What's your...
That they are different.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
Right? That they have this, that they have that, they're different, they're different. Do you know where I learned this? And it's really amazing because I went on a work trip to Nepal for World Vision.
Okay.
And we did a sexual health education, a very rudimentary one, okay, for kids.
Yeah.
For kids, for the Nepalese kids, right? Because we wanted to teach the guys to respect the girls, especially because most of the time, lower sec, upper primary, some of them start to have their period. Right? So when we teach this type of sexual health, right, they understand that like, oh, if I got a sister, right, what does it mean? Right? What if I see another girl and then I start to feel, because for guys, we don't have a very clear cut, oh, my period come. No what? Right? But sometimes your sexual desires may come.
Yeah.
Right? And then that's when you'll be like, oh, what does this all mean? Right? Wouldn't you rather teach that first than they own self discover?
That's true. Yeah.
So that is where I feel that it's important to indicate that this is gonna come, this is gonna be what, but you're gonna be fine. And then you teach that there are differences, and this is what a girl is, this is what a guy is. Something that's a little bit more gentle and holistic to follow.
Yeah.
Because the thing about it is that when you overload people on, I get that like when you overload with certain more major information, kids will not understand. That's fine because they're not mature enough. That's fine, right? But if the only message that people get from sex ed educations is don't.
Yeah.
They learn nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that abstinence shouldn't be a message. I think that it should be part of it.
I think abstinence should be the for the earlier half of teens, it should be the goal.
Yes.
Right? But it shouldn't be what's taught.
Correct.
And I think there's a key difference there.
Okay, even if it's taught, I was talking to my teacher again, and she was saying that like, sure, abstinence should be something that you teach, like in a way that like, okay, here is why you want to consider abstaining. Religious reasons, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But you should also provide the other side. Like, why are you thinking your virginity as such a sacred thing? Is it something that is inherent in you? Do you really believe it, or is it like basically forced upon you? Get them thinking about these things, and to let them thinking about these things, you can't just say abstinence. You have to show both sides. I think that's the biggest problem now, is that there's no other side. It's abstinence or nothing.
So like I give you an example. A lot of times, right, the sexual process, right, is not covered in a manner that is typically not fully covered, or it's not covered in a manner that is relevant to society. A man and a woman fall in love, and then they sleep together, and then they make a baby. That whole part is skipped.
Okay.
Right? Go and explain what happens. Go and actively show scientific diagram of what actually happens. Because I think this is very important. Especially show of the opposite gender.
And I do think that like for when it comes to like sex, I think it's also this might be a bit controversial, but I do think it is quite important to teach how to have good sex also. It's like no information
healthy
out there.
Sex or as in like you think that
the female
school should cover.
Okay? I think the school should cover
about how to properly have sex.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, you agree. Okay, wait. A lot of people are not going to agree with me, but I feel like it should.
People are going to think we're crazy, but
yeah.
Hear us out.
Because I've been talking to my friends who are girls, and like a lot of them don't know what lube is. And I'm amazed that like got people that don't know what it is. And like they are my age, they are like 23. I mean, they haven't had sex before, but like I'm just like, wow, you don't know this, like the first time you have sex is gonna be shit. It's gonna be terrible, And like on top of the fact that the guy is probably inexperienced, it's gonna be even worse already. And I like to say that like guys are very easy to please. If you like anyhow touch, you'll feel good. But like for girls, it's incredibly difficult, and like everyone is like different. And like,
exactly.
Like the fact that we are not taught that, or for guys we can kind of deal with it, but for the girls, right, it's especially bad for you guys, because it's like we have no idea, right? We have no idea what to do. We have no idea what we are doing. If we don't even know about lube, we don't know about anything that might help the experience.
Sometimes you don't even know whether what you're feeling is correct.
Correct.
Right? And as a result of that, there are a lot of like potential sexual complications that can come along with it. Like for example, if let's say not enough lubrication, there may be little bit of bleeding and stuff like that, which can lead to what, infections and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you don't want that. And wouldn't that be a very clear prevention is better than cure scenario, right? So like maybe you don't need to teach people how to physically do it, because I think the logistics of that is gonna be impossible. But like maybe you can tell them, for example, right? What are some indicators that like that you need? Maybe like for example, you mentioned about lubrication. It could be one of those things.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe to be safe, right? I may want to lubricate first. It's things like this that you only discover after you do. And then suddenly by the time you discover, it's like you too late. The deed is gonna be done regardless.
Yeah, and like I think a lot of girls feel like their first time their first time will hurt. Like this, like I feel like there's a misconception. I feel like it will hurt a little bit, but it's not supposed to cause you extreme pain. But a lot of girls tend to think that it should, so they kind of just live with it. Like the problem is that because there's no education, and as I said, everything we know is porn, and everything we know is movies. They portray it as it hurting. That's why you think it should hurt, never mind. Then you just let it go. But
correct, and I think that like it may or may not have been covered in like class before, one time, that kind. But the problem is, okay, here is the problem, okay? If you have a class, if you defend, we already have a class, what's the point of having a class, right? If there is no learning. Right? There is no point in having a class, right? If there is no learning. So, right, I feel that as a result of the way kids are, first you need to make it palatable for them at their appropriate age group. And the second thing, right, is to have it taught, right? Because I really cannot stress how important sexual health is. Have it taught as much as how you would, I don't know, physical education or something like that. I feel it's as important.
Yeah. Especially these
and like
days.
We have, we have so many years of teaching resource, and there are so many professional sexual health doctors out there. I am pretty sure, okay, we can definitely find resources on how to transfer this type of knowledge to children.
Yeah.
Because we owe it to them. They don't know. Right? And I mean, we're all adults. That means we have been children before, right? We understand. We ought to. Right?
Yeah. And like I've been watching Sex Education on Netflix. So for those people who haven't watched that show, I highly recommend it. But I feel like that show, right, is basically what I wish.
Is it an actual sex ed show?
It is a drama that is based around this guy who has a mom who is a sex therapist, and he runs a sex clinic at school. So basically, he gives out sex advice in his school with a lot of people who are having sex in their teens.
Okay.
And I feel like that movie, right? I feel all the messages should have been shared in school. It should have been our sex ed. Maybe not sure because movie got nudity lah. But like other than that, maybe shares like all the messages lah. I feel like there are very cool messages like about consent, about like fetishes.
Yeah.
All these things that were just like completely, maybe they
never
talked about
mentioned.
it like a consent thing. Like in like Singapore schools, like consent will be about like, oh boys, make sure you respect the girl. They say no, it's just no. Okay, then move on. And it's never like what is consent. If the girl is drunk, is it consent? If
what is
the
purpose?
Yeah, what is the purpose of it? And like for example, the whole voyeurism thing with the Monica Bay thing, I feel like that could have been prevented. I'm not saying that the education system is the only reason for his bad behavior and that he's fully absolved from any responsibility, but I feel like all these cases of voyeurism, of like all these
sexual
things,
deviant activity, basically. Let's just call it all sexual crimes.
Yeah, sexual crimes can be prevented
from the pettier ones to the very vicious ones. All these, right? Okay, as much as yes, there's an individual at fault here, right? I think we're all neglecting that society has failed them as children.
It really has. It really, really has. And I think I remember talking to John about this before. I was saying, a very, very long time ago, I was saying, do you feel like the reason why there's like the Monaco Bay incident partially is because Singaporeans view sex as such a taboo.
It's really very taboo. I don't know why how it reached this point. I guess like I mentioned, we are an Asian society, so there are some Asian values at play here, modesty, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like, in order to be modest, shouldn't you be familiar with what you shouldn't be doing?
That's right. You have to know
Doesn't that
both
make
sides.
sense?
You have to know both sides to pick a side.
Exactly. You cannot tell someone to, I don't know, don't start a fire without telling them what matches look like.
Correct.
They don't know what. It's a stick with a red top. I just put. Right? You don't know what. So I feel that like instead of telling kids like, no, it's taboo. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't touch yourself. You shouldn't have sex so early. You shouldn't fair. That. But like I mentioned, that should be the goal, but it shouldn't be what is taught. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And these are very different things, and like our education system is very equipped for teaching things that are like a goal without actually just pushing it in people's face. Right?
Yeah. I do think that like sex ed, I mean we can say so much, right? But at the end of the day, if you ask me to go and teach a bunch of students sex ed, right, I also cannot do that. Let's be honest with ourselves here.
No, I feel that like that's a start. Let me tell you why I feel that you let's say going out to teach students is a start. Okay? Because it breaks the stigma. Because someone that is not their teacher is willing to talk about it. And this, I'm gonna say it, and it's gonna be a bit controversial, right? Parents ought to play an active step in this as well.
I agree.
And if you don't, you fail your children.
Has your parents talked to you about it?
No.
I don't think I have ever.
The only thing I can ever recall from them talking about this, right, is they will question me and they'll ask me, "Is you go and look at sexy photo or not?" Like that helps. Of course, my answer is no, right? Even if I have.
Because it's sneaky children.
because it just sounds like I will get into trouble.
Right, yeah.
Right? But why? I never understood why.
Like, why should you, right?
And that becomes problematic because if this question is asked to me now, right?
Yeah.
Now, when I'm 29, if I say yes, there's no consequence.
Yeah.
And children will never understand why if you don't explain it.
Yeah.
You get it, right?
Yeah, I get it.
And this is why I say that like the parents are also a lot at fault when it comes to this sexual taboo and this sexual education not being passed down. Because they retain all that knowledge and the only thing they teach is like, okay, cannot, don't. The best interest is definitely there. But the method of it being done, right, is it doesn't help the children. That's the thing.
I think I have like, my parents never talked about it before, but like, I would like to think that for the most part, they are pretty accepting. And like, they have told me
what do you expect?
I don't expect much, to be very honest with you.
I mean, honestly, let's think logically here, okay?
Yeah.
Right? They can only ask you to abstain for so long.
Exactly.
Firstly,
correct.
They know what's it like being a young adult.
Yeah.
Secondly, I mean, you're born for a reason.
Correct. They had sex. But like, okay, my parents have been like pretty cool because like, I mean, when I got my first girlfriend at 16, they did tell me like, hey, member must like respect her, don't like do anything that she doesn't want.
That's
to.
Very cool.
Don't go and like touch her at places that she like private parts lah. Yeah. But that's like as far as my sex ed goes with my parents. But I think that's already like pretty good compared to most of the parents in Singapore. But to add on to the whole consent thing, right? I think consent is such a big topic in of it itself that even now we are still trying to, like, I won't say figure out, but like even now there are guys who still don't get it fully. And like recently, there's this YouTuber called Yellow Paco. He recently got into this trouble. If people who watch the Nigahiga, he has like some scandal thing going on. So there's this girl who said that essentially she didn't want to have sex, but he asked her to come over to his house, and he said that like, oh, we won't have sex, whatever. Then when he went over, he like basically forced himself onto her, and he said no, but the guy was like trying to convince her to have sex, and then eventually she gave in. So like she said yes, but is that consent? So
no,
like,
it's coerced, what?
Yeah, exactly. So like all these things are things that guys won't like it's very difficult to understand unless someone like we have an open conversation and discussion about it.
You bring up a good point. Because right, most of the time I feel that like when people are logically processing this as a third person point of view, right, we can always be very objective about this case study.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing about it is that a lot of times I feel that when people are taken over by passion, taken over by desire, right?
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
crimes of passion are a thing, right? Where people murder in an emotional state, where
Yeah.
people fight in an emotional state and stuff like that.
Yeah.
These are a thing, right? If we actually brought these case studies out to let the kids understand. Kids, I say the whole broad spectrum now, basically.
Yeah.
If we actually at the appropriate age introduce them to these topics, right?
Mhm.
They will have a concrete picture in their head about what a situation like this looks like. What a situation of consent looks like.
Yeah.
And then if it's from a victim's perspective, they'll understand, hey, this is coercion.
Like this is not right.
Correct. From a perpetrator's perspective, he may be able to check himself. He or she may be able to check himself before he wrecked himself. Right? He may realize, if let's say he's with this partner of his and then this person says no and then eventually says yes and then she's like, actually I feel like you're coercing me. It may wake him up. He may wake him or her up. It may be like, oh shit, I didn't intend for that. Right? If I calm down a little, right, I wouldn't have made these unnecessary advances because I am not a shit person. And I think a lot of children lack that.
Yeah, and like I won't say a lot, but like there are some rape scenarios or like non-consensual scenarios where the thing that happened is, I won't say a grey area, but like it's not as violent as the news make it out to be or media make it out to be. It's not like someone grab you from a dark alley and just randomly pull off your pants and like just have sex with you or rape you.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's like, that's why I say like coercion. It might even happen in your relationship. And most of it is sometimes the guys don't even know. And like it's crazy to sound to say it this way because we should know. But like honestly speaking, I didn't even know about the whole coercion thing until like pretty recently.
No, and the thing is, I'm very, very sure because unfortunately, a lot of sexual crime in Singapore are committed by guys, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of times, right, the argument is that you should know, but the fact is, a lot of people don't even know they don't know.
You don't know what? Yeah, exactly.
They don't even know that they don't know. They just operate as per normal. I'm a high functioning, educated human, ma. That's what the expectation of society is.
Yeah.
But what if this person received close to no sexual education that properly developed him? That means his mathematics intellect, his book smart intellect is 22 years old. But as far as we're concerned, right, his sex education stopped when he's lower sec.
Yeah.
Then how? What does he learn? What does he or she learn? Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this learn by experience thing very dangerous, What is especially dangerous for people, right, who have a bit more deviant behavior?
Yeah.
Are we gonna exclude them? No, what? They are members of our society and we owe it to them as a society to lift people up, what? Just because the majority got along fine because they're lucky doesn't mean we ought to leave the people behind.
And like I'm not saying that like consent is not a commonsensical thing, because it's pretty commonsensical. Don't have sex with the girl unless
I'm referring to a lot of other things as well.
Yeah, and like I'm towards the consent thing. It's like I feel like it's just the whole nuance of it that is very not discussed properly.
Yeah.
And because it's such a taboo, as what John said, we don't know what we don't know. And it's not that we guys who inevitably do this like coercion thing want to be shitty people. It's just that maybe it's just they don't know. And I know that's a very bad excuse for bad behavior. But at the same time, I think that part of it can also be attributed to the fact that they never grew up in an environment where sex was talked about.
If they have that understanding, right, I'm not gonna say that if we properly educate children that sexual predators will not grow up from those children.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the mere fact is, where if this person grows up with a deviant desire, right, with the education, he understands it better. He or she understands it better.
And they'll understand whether is it like appropriate for them to do it.
Yes, and like through this style of education, right, they will also recognize that, hey, I'm an individual with these needs, right?
Yeah.
That person is also another individual with another set of needs.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think in high in sexual situations, right, people are not processing that anymore.
Mm.
So add on the fact that they're ignorant, right, and they're not processing that anymore, right, it's not gonna, they're not gonna be able to act appropriately.
I feel like I have to do a lot of like disclaimers for this, especially because it's a very sensitive topic. I do want to say that if someone doesn't have consensual sex, they should be punished. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be. It should be. But I do think that we should look at it not so much of,
I think we need
oh
to
my
take
god,
a
this guy's a
step back
monster.
to look at all these case studies.
Yeah.
Because like I mentioned, right, what we're talking about here is a societal issue of education, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always, I mean, maybe I'm too idealistic here, but I always believe in the hope of the future and the hope that is in people, the goodness that is in people that even the most crazy criminals have. And I feel that like a lot of times society has failed to bring that best part of them out, and then they do bad things. But on this topic of sexual education, I just feel that like, there can be so much more that can be done in the way of prevention being better than cure.
Correct.
Right? We have a very robust education system that is praised around the world. The infrastructure is already there. It's just the right syllabus so that children learn at the correct pace also. It ought to be taught like how mathematics is taught. Right? Primary school teach what? Mathematics is very simple one. Then suddenly they start to use calculator. Suddenly they start to learn all the more crazy functions. Start to learn all the new mathematics rules and stuff like that. There is definitely a progression for sex health.
Yeah.
Don't you think? It could be as simple as identifying who is different first, right? And then identifying that, how each person experience puberty, which I believe, right, they definitely do during sex ed, but one time.
Yeah, and it doesn't register.
Then that's it.
Yeah. I do think that we need to take in account all like the sexually deviant behaviors in our society, especially recently, and not view it as a, oh my god, this guy's a monster, this guy or girl is a monster, or
correct,
oh my god, this is just terrible. I mean, it is, but we have to take a step back and go like, okay, how as a society and our education system, how can we improve this and make sure that this never happens again?
Correct. Besides criminalizing the act.
Correct. It's also about preventing. Yeah.
The lesson must be taught.
Yes, correct. And the easiest way to teach these things is openly talk about it.
Yes.
And openly talk about like fetishes, talk about consent, talk about all these things
in an educational setting. And
correct.
I think that's very important.
I agree.
And like I mentioned, this is gonna be something that I think a lot of MOA teachers, if they watch this and then they have feedback, right? I'm just gonna put it out there that like there can be a lot of teaching, right? There can be a lot of classes, but it's useless if there's no learning. You know?
Yeah.
So if the immediate answer, if let's suddenly one minister of education listen to what we talk about, thank you minister for tuning in by the way. So if they tune into our podcast, right, and then they're like, okay tomorrow we implement more class. There's no point of more classes if there's no learning. It has to be approached, right, in a truly holistic way.
And the person that like conducts the classes should be someone that is qualified, someone who, because for now, right, sex education, if I'm not wrong, is done by a random teacher who, by the way, most teachers,
a syllabus.
Especially, exactly. And by the way, most of the teachers who taught us, right, are still from the conservative era who pretty much would rather not talk about it.
Yes.
And the problem is that when teachers talk about sex, being 16, 15-year-old immature assholes, right, you always go like, oh my god, the teacher has sex before, oh my god, she said this in class.
Then you just giggle, and then the session just becomes pointing at the pictures and laughing, and then nobody learns anything. And then the only thing we take away is those STD that have with a funny name.
Correct, exactly. So like what it should, I feel that there should be an external person, preferably a sex therapist, preferably someone who is trained, who has a lot of knowledge about it, who is able to conduct such a class to do it instead of an in-house teacher. Exactly. I think that would be like the best way. I don't blame any teachers for not being able to do it well, because like honestly, they probably never got any sex ed also.
Yes.
And so like, they also probably didn't know how it's supposed to go down. But there are sex therapists in Singapore. There are like people who basically study this. Like, why not use their expertise for better
And the other
use,
thing, I feel that right, if we're able to move this step forward, we're able to move even further also for the LGBTQ community also. Because eventually, if sex ed is able to cover for other sexualities, right, it'll be perfect. You know,
that'll be great.
because we create a more cohesive and educated world, and we have the premise to do it, and that is school. And the only thing that is necessary, that is really stopping people from doing it, is because everyone is like, oh, it's an icky subject to talk about. Oh, I don't think my children should be exposed to this. Like, come on lah, please. You're not gonna raise your child to end up abstaining forever, right? You want them to learn through porn? Or you want them to learn through someone with good intentions like you? Obviously, you want the latter, right? Unless you want the former, then I got nothing to say lah. Then you do you. But like, if you are a concerned parent and your excuse for not exposing your children to it is my child is too young, they don't understand, then I think you're setting yourself up for disaster. Because when you have a child that is not allowed to understand, right, the true facts and learn how to be a good sexual partner with a good sex health, right? They're gonna learn the hard way,
which is often
by
not
themselves,
the right way,
and often it's not ideal.
Yes,
I don't claim to be a better parent than you. If you're a parent and you're watching, hey, thank you so much for tuning in. But I don't claim to be a better parent than you. Okay, I'm just saying from my perspective as a child, right? I wish these conversations came when I was still a child.
Yeah, me too.
That's the thing.
And I would like to think that I'm like not, I don't have like very weird fetishes or desires, but I would think if I'm a child with very abnormal, not say abnormal, very different and unique tastes, like even LGBTQ, right? I would want a parent and a adult figure in my life that I can talk to about these issues.
And at minimum, right? At minimum, this is where I said what I said earlier. We owe it to these children, right, to teach them what we know.
Yeah.
Even if we may not be able to necessarily provide the right role model for them. Like, for example, there are people who grow up eventually to discover that they are asexual.
Yeah, exactly.
So for heterosexual parents, right, they are not able to properly educate these people, right?
Correct.
For sure, right? If you ask people like us, we also don't know, right?
I have no idea. Yeah, exactly.
And does that mean these people shouldn't be, I don't know, educated on how they should react? They absolutely should.
I'm very sure there are students or children out there who are like asexual and they're looking at their friends having sex and like having sexual desires and feeling like they are like a weirdo. Like, why do I not want to have sex? And it's like, but it's very normal, and like it comes with a whole set of issues. Like, just if I don't want to have sex, does it mean that I don't want a partner? Does it mean I cannot have a boyfriend or a girlfriend? Like all these follow-up questions that will come, but because no one is willing to talk about it, and because we are not hiring the right people to talk about it, children will never get to know the answer to these questions.
Yeah, and it becomes a judgmental thing. Suddenly, we continue to perpetuate the cycle where heterosexual people are the only normal.
Correct. And yeah, I agree. And that's why I highly recommend watching Sex Education to know that sex is such a big topic. It's not just penis going to vagina.
Yeah, don't watch too much porn, that's what I'm saying. Don't watch too much porn. I'm not saying don't watch porn.
Too much.
I know a lot of people will agree with me, but like, come on, let's be realistic here, okay?
Yeah.
There are only two types of people in the world. Okay? People who watch porn and people who tell lies.
No, I truly believe there are people who don't watch porn.
Okay, fine, that's an overgeneralization, but you understand what I mean, okay?
Yeah,
there is a bigger message to be had behind all our jokes here, okay?
Yeah.
And the fact is that whenever you learn from something that is, let's face it, porn is for entertainment. When you learn sexual health from something that is meant to be entertainment and to be sold as a commodity, right? You learn the wrong things. And that's not good, because especially as a child, especially as a teen, especially as a young adult, right? Those are not the things you want to pick up.
Yes. And I feel like we've been talking about this for a very long time. As you guys know, that this is something that we are quite, as you guys can see,
passionate
something
about.
that we are quite passionate. Yeah, exactly. Yes. But I think that's a good way to end it, right? I think he talked a lot about it. In fact,
I think
there are
it
so
is.
many more topics about sex education and sex in general that if you guys want us to talk about, we really don't mind. And just put it in the comments down below and I will see it and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah. And honestly speaking, we do quite enjoy talking about some of these more taboo subjects about Singapore. So if you all have any suggestions about, the more hush things in Singapore that deserve to have a bit of a discussion about, of course we don't want to be too sedacious or too controversial we can always try to open that conversation and discuss and share our opinion with you.
Yeah. And I mean, today's topic was pretty controversial. I feel like we say a lot of things that were like maybe people are a bit not used to hearing on the YouTube channel, especially a Singaporean YouTube channel. But I do hope that you guys manage to listen to it and like with an open mind and hear what our like core messages are.
We're not accusing anyone. We're not saying anyone no good. We're just saying that we can do better in terms of sex education in Singapore.
Yes. And if you guys have any things you agree with, disagree with, can put it down in the comments down below. We will have a wonderful discussion with you guys.
And give us these.
Please subscribe. We are almost at 3K, guys. We are almost at 3K.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
See you guys in the next one.
Subscribe. Ring the bell.
That's right.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Don't watch too much porn.